Claude Code costs 10 times more than Opencode at entry level, and that gap can run you an extra $200 a month if you're a heavy user. $20 a month versus zero. Both tools are getting serious adoption right now, so I'm putting Opencode against Claude Code across 5 categories to see who actually wins. The cheaper tool doesn't automatically win on performance, and that trade-off could flip your whole decision when we hit the benchmark test. My name is Brian, and I'm in these tools 12 hours a day, so you don't have to be. Every number in this comparison is traced back to official pricing pages, vendor docs, and community benchmarks both sides actually stand behind. This one's for solo devs and teams running coding agents daily, where the wrong pick costs real money across 5 dimensions. Test 1 is cost. A solo dev shipping a side project on a tight budget needs to know what month 1 actually runs them. Opencode's entry point is $0 with your own API keys. Claude Code's cheapest plan is $20 a month. No free tier, no trial unless you count a $5 first month promo on the Go plan. And that gap compounds fast if you're running agents every day. I went through every tier both tools publish. Opencode's free BYOK tier undercuts Claude Code's $20 minimum, full stop. At the heavy use ceiling, Opencode's Zen plan sits at $20 prepaid, while Claude Code's max plans run $100 to $200 a month. The per-token API option on Claude Code makes budgeting even harder, while Opencode keeps flat subscription pricing across the board. Opencode takes cost, and it's not close. Free entry, flat tiers, no per-token surprises. Claude Code doesn't offer a free tier at all, and that puts Opencode up 1-0 on the scoreboard. The price gap is real money, hundreds of dollars a month at the ceiling. Test 2 is coding benchmark performance. 83%. That's the number on screen right now, and it's the SWE Bench Pro pass rate Claude Code, posts with Opus 5.0 across 350 test cases. If your agent fails a production bug that a benchmark verified model would have caught, that's a missed deploy, a rollback, and hours of your time gone. So does Opencode have an equivalent number? Opencode publishes no equivalent score, and I want to be clear about why. Opencode is a harness you plug your own models into, so there's no single benchmark number to compare against. Claude Code's 83% SWE Bench Pro with Opus 5.0 is a verified, published figure. Opencode does have an open source benchmark dashboard where you can test your own local models, but that's a tool, not a score. Claude Code takes this one because 83% on SWE Bench Pro is a real verified number, and Opencode simply has nothing to put next to it. I couldn't find a community benchmark score from Opencode either, so Claude Code earns this point cleanly. That ties us up at 1-1, and the performance gap here is worth keeping in mind as we go. Test 3 is speed. 9 minutes and 9 seconds versus 16 minutes and 20 seconds on the exact same production code-based task. That's the community benchmark result, and if you're running dozens of agent tasks a day, that 7-minute gap per task adds up to hours of block time every week. Speed isn't a nice to have when your team is literally waiting on the agent before they can ship. I pulled the community benchmark data, and Claude Code finished in 9 minutes, 9 seconds. Opencode in 16 minutes, 20 seconds on the same task, which works out to roughly 44% faster for Claude Code. But I want to be upfront about something. Opencode's slower pace came with 29% more test coverage, so Claude Code moved fast and introduced hidden technical debt in the same test. Take it with a grain of salt since these are community benchmarks, not controlled lab conditions. Claude Code wins speed on raw wall clock time, 44% faster per task. The thoroughness trade-off is real, but the time gap is big enough that Claude Code earns this one. That puts Claude Code ahead 2-1, and if a raw turnaround is what your workflow needs most, that lead matters. Alright, so cost and deployment are still to score, and deployment is the one that could completely flip how you think about the price gap we opened it with. If Opencode's 75+ provider support changes what model you can actually run, the cost math changes too. And context limits are about to get interesting for anyone working on a large code base. Test 4 is context and output limits. 1 million tokens. That's Claude Code's fast mode context window. And if you're working through a large monorepo or a legacy codebase with hundreds of files, running out of context mid-task means the agent loses the thread and you're back to square one. So how does Opencode stack up here? Claude Code's fast mode spans a full 1 million token context window, and the enterprise tier drops to 500K, but that's still a massive window. For Opencode, I couldn't find a published context limit anywhere, and that's because it depends entirely on whichever model you plug in. So the context you get with Opencode is flexible, but it's also unverified and totally model dependent. This one's a tie. Claude Code has the verified number, but Opencode's flexibility means you could plug in a model with an equally large window, so there's no clean winner here, and I'm calling it that way. The score stays Claude Code 2, Opencode 1, with 1 tied. Test 5 is deployment and modality. 75 plus LLM providers on one side, Anthropic only on the other. If your company has a policy against sending code to a single vendor's API, or you need to run a local model for compliance, Claude Code locks you out completely, and that's a real blocker for a lot of teams. It's the kind of constraint that makes the tool unusable before you even get to pricing. So I mapped out every surface both tools cover. Opencode runs in the terminal, any IDE, and desktop, and it connects to 75 plus providers through models.dev, including local models. Claude Code covers terminal, VS Code, JetBrains, Cursor, Slack, web, and mobile, which is broader first-party surface coverage, no question. But it's Anthropic models only, full stop, and Opencode is fully open source, where Claude Code is proprietary with real lock-in risk. Opencode wins deployment and modality. Claude Code's broader surface coverage is real, but 75 plus providers and open source licensing is a fundamentally different category of flexibility, and that ties the overall score at 2-2 with 1 tied, which means the verdict really does come down to what you need. Opencode wins on cost, flexibility, and transparency. Free BYOK entry, a $10 Go plan, and a $20 Zen ceiling for heavy use. 75 plus LLM providers and open source licensing means 0 lock-in. And the slower task pace comes with 29% more test coverage, which is a real trade-off, not a flaw. Claude Code wins on raw performance and ecosystem reach. Verified 83% on SWE Bench Pro with Opus 5.0. 44% faster task completion at 9 minutes 9 seconds, and a 1 million token context window for large codebases. It also covers more surfaces out of the box, terminal, IDE, Slack, web, and mobile, all managed and polished. Okay, so the overall score landed 2-2 with 1 tied, and I'll admit I went in thinking cost alone would make Opencode the easy pick. But Claude Code's 83% benchmark and 44% speed advantage are real. So here's the decision rule. If you need local first, multi-provider, or 0 lock-in, Opencode wins, and the $0 to start makes it a no-brainer. If you need the fastest managed agent with verified performance, Claude Code at $20 a month is worth it. If you want to see how Claude Code holds up against a completely different kind of challenger, I ran it head-to-head with GitHub Copilot in a video called Claude Code versus GitHub Copilot, and the results on raw code completion are pretty interesting and worth watching before you commit to either tool.